What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today we've got our Week 8 fantasy wide receiver starts and sits for every single matchup, so make sure to tune in. And if you guys enjoy, hit that like button and subscribe. Also, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us as the week progresses. Shoot us your questions on there as well. We will do our best to answer them. And in the meantime, check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. Sign up for our free newsletter to get access to exclusive content. All those details in the description. But for now, let's get right into it. Before getting into our breakdowns, I want to give you guys a quick word from our sponsors at Overlay Fantasy Sports, who are taking DFS to a whole nother level. And I specifically want to highlight their matchup shop function, which is an absolute blast. In fact, we've been using it since the start of the NFL season because, let's face it, betting on the same old Team A versus Team B can get a little bit stale, a little bit boring. Well, that's not even close to being the case with the matchup shop of Overlay Fantasy, as it allows you to bet on individual player matchups, and it's super simple. Just pick whichever player you think will have the higher fantasy performance. And just like a regular bet would work, check out the spreads, do your research, and then win some money. You can bet on pretty much any single sport that you want, whether it's NFL, golf, MLB, etc. All those options are there. And again, super simple. Pretty much for any single NFL game coming up, you've got a bunch of different matchups that are always updated and added to. So if it's something as simple as just putting a single submission, you can do that. But guess what? If you want to get a parlay going and double up some of those winnings, you can do that as well. So take advantage of this. All of that homework you're doing for your fantasy lineups, let's have that translate to some big time winnings for your wallet as well. So do yourself a favor and check out Overlay Fantasy's matchup shop now. Looking at our first matchup, we've got the Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers and some pretty good wide receiver choices here. Let's start with the Falcons. Calvin Ridley, you start him every single week, no matter what, and when healthy, Julio Jones as well. Both these guys get a bunch of targets, high touchdown upside, especially for Calvin Ridley. Now, I know the first time these two teams played, the Falcons offensively struggled a bit, but I do expect a bounce back game here in general, not only from the offense from Matt Ryan, and I do believe that both wide receivers here for the Falcons are wide receiver ones on the week, even though the Panthers' pass defense has been good and the Falcons will primarily try to attack them on the ground. Ridley and Jones are still great plays this week. Then for the Panthers, Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore. Anderson continues, in my eyes, to be the guy for the Panthers. Don't let these last couple of big weeks for DJ Moore fool you, because it's been a lot with very little in terms of volume. It's been big touchdowns, and there haven't been that many targets compared to Robbie Anderson, who has been much more steady in that department. So I still prefer Robbie Anderson in this offense for the Panthers. I think Anderson and DJ Moore are probably high-end wide receiver twos on the week. One of them, if they separate themselves from the other, probably in the wide receiver one category, because this Falcons defense can be had, and I do expect a big game here from Teddy Bridgewater. Then as far as our sits, really only one name comes to mind. That would be Russell Gage. Now, maybe you keep an eye out on Julio Jones, because usually he's held out of practice all week, and this is a Thursday game, so it's a quicker turnaround. I doubt that Julio Jones misses this contest, but if he does, then Russell Gage, you could plug him in as a start. But right now, I presume it will be Ridley and Julio Jones, both probably low-end wide receiver ones, and that leaves Russell Gage out of that option, so I have him as a sit. Then Vikings at the Packers. You're going to start Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson. The question here is, who will draw Jair Alexander, because that will be a much tougher matchup throughout this contest and will likely limit the upside. Now, if I had to guess, I would say it would be Adam Thielen, but I still love his upside. The targets will be there. He's someone that Kirk Cousins looks for no matter where the ball is, whether it's in midfield, whether it's, with 10 yards to go to score a touchdown. I love Thielen. And then Justin Jefferson, this is a good matchup for him. He's only gotten better since the start of the season. I still have Thielen ranked higher. To me, he is more reliable, so I see him as a low-end wide receiver 1, and then Justin Jefferson probably is a mid-level wide receiver 2. Then for the Packers, Devontae Adams, probably going to be your wide receiver 1 on the week overall. You love what Devontae Adams brings to the table when he's healthy. We saw it this last week. And versus this Vikings secondary, I'm not scared one bit. I expect another huge game from Devontae Adams. The only thing that could stop Devontae Adams is the Packers having a ton of success on the ground, which I'm not ruling out, but still Devontae Adams is a must start like always. As far as our sits, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Look, right now, opposite Devontae Adams, MVS is probably the next guy up, but there's still some tight end options, still running back options, and even in last week's game where the Packers scored all those points, Valdez-Scantling failed to impress, got a couple targets, didn't really do much with them, so I still have him as a sit. There's a huge drop-off from Adams to pretty much the next best wide receiver. This is a two-person offense with Devontae Adams and then Aaron Jones or whoever is starting at running back, so just keep that in mind. Following this, we've got the Titans at the Bengals. For the Titans, there's only one wide receiver here I would start. That is A.J. Brown, who has been great since his return from injury. And the reason I say this is primarily because I think this is going to be a Derrick Henry type of game. Look, the Bengals defense, nothing all that intimidating, and they have issues from top to bottom. So I think Derrick Henry is someone that will, get a lot of volume, and the Titans will ride out a victory with him. Corey Davis, Adam Humphries, way too unpredictable, so I am fading them. Then for the Bengals, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, A.J. Green. It's one of those rare situations. We said start all three guys last week, and to some extent, they all paid off. Now, Tyler Boyd had the best week, followed by T. Higgins, then A.J. Green. But, all these guys are contributing. It's going to depend on the passing volume week to week and obviously the touchdowns, but I still have Boyd as the preferred option. T. Higgins probably as the wide receiver 2, barely above A.J. Green, but it's very close. You could flip it. That's where it'll probably come down to touchdowns, but I anticipate the Bengals having to pass it a lot here. So I like all these three options with Boyd having the highest ceiling as a high-end wide receiver 2. Next, we've got the Jets at the Chiefs. And for the Jets, this is a little bit tough. If he plays, I'm firing up Jamison Crowder. No mistake about that. If he doesn't, then Brashad Perriman. There's some other wide receivers there, Mims, Berrios for the Jets, but I just don't have enough faith in them, especially if Jamison Crowder plays, so keep that in mind. Crowder, he's the name that you have to, track throughout the week because he's the safest play for the Jets. Then for the Chiefs, I expect a big game from Tyreek Hill out of any of these other wide receivers comparably. So he's been a little bit quiet these last few weeks, but I do expect a bounce back game versus the Jets. Now, I wouldn't be shocked to see the Chiefs just dominate on the ground here. But again, when it comes to ranking my confidence in the Kansas City wide receivers, Hill still earns the top spot. Then you see Mecole Hardman as a sit. Yes, he had a better week than a Tyreek in week 7, but again, don't let that fool you. He's very much so a boom or bust type of wide receiver, not too dissimilar from Tyreek Hill, but Hill still has a bigger share in this offense. Hardman, he'll do it once and then kind of disappear for 2 to 3 weeks, so I don't have that confidence in him. I am sitting him here. And then Colts at Lions. This is where it gets tough to pinpoint the situation for the Colts. You've got 3 wide receivers to really consider. I'm taking a chance on Marcus Johnson here. The last time the Colts were playing, he kind of impressed the most, per my opinion. T.Y. Hilton, to me right now, is a sit. He fails to impress, just isn't getting it done. And then Zach Pascal as well. I see him more of a similar type of wide receiver to T.Y. Hilton. So Marcus Johnson gets the slight nod there. It's really going to be a dart throw in terms of which one of these three wide receivers has the big game, in my opinion. Again, I think it'll be a situation where the Colts lean on the rushing attack more so than anything. Then for the Lions, I'm going with Kenny Golladay here. He's the wide receiver I have the most confidence in. And this is a defense for the Colts that is pretty stingy, so keep that in mind. I don't expect a huge blow-up performance from any one of these wide receivers. That's why, as you can see here, we have got the number 2 option in the Detroit offense, Marvin Jones, as a sit. Moving on, Steelers at Ravens. Again, a tough wide receiver room to break down for the Steelers when all these guys are healthy. You currently see Juju Smith-Schuster and Deontay Johnson as starts, and let me explain. So first and foremost, this is a tough matchup versus the Baltimore Ravens. And I don't think we're going to see a big-time explosion type of game from 2 out of the 3 wide receivers. So one of these guys will separate themselves, probably Deontay Johnson, because when he's been healthy, he's been producing, especially in the touchdown department. Juju Smith-Schuster, I do think that this will be a game where he sees a lot of action because it's a tough matchup. He's that experienced wide receiver. I think he's going to get those tough yards, and he will have volume. I see him as a low-end wide receiver, too. Deontay Johnson is a mid-level wide receiver, too. And then Chase Claypool right now, I think, is the odd man out. I just don't think the Steelers' offense versus this Ravens defense will be able to maintain 3 relevant fantasy wide receivers. So Claypool is a fade. Then Marquise Brown is a start, but we say it every single week. Keep in mind that Brown is boom or bust. And when you combine that with the fact that the Ravens are going up versus the Steelers defense, I don't like his chances at all. You know, maybe you take a chance on him in standard formats. If it's PPR, I'm fading him because I don't think the targets will be there. I don't think the receptions will be there. And honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if the Ravens kind of stall here offensively with the Steelers defense. But Brown is still your best option as far as Ravens wide receivers are concerned. Before continuing, I want to tell you guys a little bit about a new partner of ours in Thrive Fantasy, which is an absolutely awesome daily fantasy sports app that specializes in player props. And the great thing about Thrive Fantasy is that it's super simple to use, as they've eliminated the need to do countless hours of research because they only ask you about the top tier athletes in a respective sport. Literally, all you have to do is find a contest and join it. From there, just select the props you like and rack up the most points to win a share of the prize pool. And it's not just the NFL. There's NBA, MLB, PGA. Literally, you think it, Thrive Fantasy has it. In fact, Thrive has awarded over $1.5 million in prizes since launching in 2018 and has $50,000 guaranteed in prizes weekly. So sign up today, and when you use promo code ALLDAY on sign up, you receive an instant match bonus up to $50. You can download Thrive Fantasy on the App Store, Play Store, or by visiting their website, thrivefantasy.com. So stop waiting, sign up today, use promo code ALLDAY, and start propping up today. Moving on, we've got the Rams at the Dolphins. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, much easier matchup here compared to last week versus the Bears. I'm firing up both of these guys as mid-level to high-end wide receiver 2s, regardless of the format. Then for the Dolphins, this is where it gets really interesting because this officially kicks off the Tua era. So we don't really know what to expect in terms of this offense and which wide receivers to trust. Now, I tentatively have Devontae Parker as the guy that you should start for the Dolphins. I wouldn't start more than one wide receiver for the Dolphins. You know, whoever you think that top guy will be, don't get cute. Don't start 2 Miami wide receivers. This is a tough matchup as well in his first game. So I would have, you know, just those expectations in mind, temper that. And Devontae Parker, probably a low-end wide receiver 2 on the week. And for that reason, Preston Williams, Isaiah Ford as sits for the Dolphins. Afterwards, Patriots at the Bills. I only really want to start Bills players here. Stephon Diggs, John Brown, Cole Beasley. Now, maybe there's a John Brown asterisk here because his health has been a little bit iffy these last couple of weeks. But if he plays, I'm starting him. And if he does play, then Cole Beasley is a little bit lower down the pecking order. But either way, he's been getting his, so I think he's a fair play as well. Diggs continues to be the preferred choice here at wide receiver for Buffalo. Then for the Patriots, man, it has been a rough couple of weeks offensively for them. Cam Newton really been struggling, and I'm sitting all the wide receivers here. I officially don't have confidence offensively in the pass catchers for the Patriots. Okay, Julian Edelman will have one good game every 5-6 weeks, something like that at this point in time. I don't have enough confidence to start him here. I don't know what to expect from Cam Newton. And if you're not starting Edelman, I wouldn't be starting Harry or Bird, so I'm fading the pass catchers for the Patriots. Following this, Raiders at the Browns. I'll start Nelson Aguilar, I guess, because right now, surprisingly so, he's trending as the most reliable Raider wide receiver. As crazy as that sounds, he's been relatively, consistent and reliable. So keep that in mind. He's not as boom or bust as a Henry Ruggs, and he does have a higher ceiling than a Hunter Renfrow. Both those guys you see as sits for the Browns. And then for Cleveland, I'll start Jarvis Landry. And obviously the big news for the Browns, Odell Beckham done for the year. Tough to see, but on the other side of things, Jarvis Landry gets a big boost now offensively. Arguably, in PPR formats, he's a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1 for the rest of the season. I'm only starting him, though. I still don't have enough confidence in either Rashad Higgins or Donovan Jones here to confidently fire them up. I think Landry will get the majority of the work, and then it'll be a combination of tight ends and primarily Kareem Hunt. Higgins and Jones are going to be guys that are alternating between having big weeks that'll be touchdown dependent. I want to see a full first week without Odell Beckham first before committing to Higgins or Jones. So for that reason, I'm sitting them here and more so focusing on Landry, who is the top wide receiver option in this matchup. Then Chargers at the Broncos. Keenan Allen pretty much must start every single week, and you have to love the targets that he's getting. He's converting those high percentage into receptions. Yardage is there as well, throwing a couple touchdowns, hopefully, and he is, a locked and loaded wide receiver 1. I really like him here, the preferred choice to start at wide receiver. Then for the Broncos, a lot of this will depend on the status of Tim Patrick. If he doesn't play, the only wide receiver I trust is Jerry Jeudy, and it pretty much ends there. So, again, Patrick is the name we have to keep an eye out for. If he doesn't play, Jerry Jeudy gets a little bit of a boost. If he does play, I would take a chance on Patrick as well. Then for the Chargers, I'm fading Mike Williams. Again, just a reminder that once Keenan Allen was back healthy, it's the Keenan Allen, Hunter Henry show. Throwing some Justin Jackson, and Mike Williams kind of a forgotten man, so I am sitting him. Following the Saints at the Bears, the only wide receiver here, might be surprising that I'm willing to start, is Allen Robinson. This is a better matchup in my opinion compared to what the Bears faced versus the Rams. So keep that in mind. I think the offense will bounce back, but again, not by that much because after all, the quarterback is Nick Foles, and we are dealing with the Bears coaching staff. But in PPR formats, I don't mind Robinson. As far as our sits, Anthony Miller, I've said it before, after Robinson, I don't trust anybody on this Bears wide receiver core, whether it's Mooney, whether it's Miller. No, thank you. Then for the Saints, you might be surprised. Michael Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders as sits. At this point in time, so very hard to predict what's going to happen with Michael Thomas. He's been, a couple days away from playing, and then something happens, whether it's an altercation, whether it's a hamstring. I really don't know at this point in time. It's probably too early to predict whether he will be playing one reason or another, or if he won't. If he does play, I'm still having him as a sit. This is a very tough matchup. I anticipate he's probably going to be less than 100%, some rust. So as crazy as it sounds, I'm fading Michael Thomas. And then if Emmanuel Sanders comes back from the COVID list and he does play, then I'm going to fade him as well. Again, very tough Bears defense. And I think both the ceilings for these wide receivers are relatively low. Again, if they play, that's a big if, so I'm fading them. Following this, 49ers at the Seahawks. For the 49ers, Deebo Samuel hurt again, so Brendan Ayuk is the wide receiver that I'm actually really excited about this week. I think he's one of the top wide receiver waiver wire pickups, and this is a friendly matchup, so I like him here as a high-end wide receiver too. Then for the Seahawks, Tyler Lockett coming off one of the best games in recent memory, absolutely dominant. And, again, there will be some inconsistencies, but that is the type of talent he has. I do believe he's going to come back down to earth, obviously, but to me, he's still a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1. Same goes for DK Metcalf, who won't be that cold every single week. Afterwards, Cowboys at the Eagles. And boy, this becomes really tough to predict for the Cowboys offense. No Dak Prescott, obviously, for a while now. Andy Dalton hurt with that concussion. Will he be available? We don't know. Regardless, though, Cooper is the only wide receiver now that I'm willing to start for the Cowboys, just basing that on the targets that he has been getting. It's been him followed by everybody else. So for that reason, I think due to volume, Cooper is the guy that you would have to take a chance on out of the Cowboys wide receivers. Then for the Eagles, I actually like some of these possibilities. Travis Fulgham is the wide receiver I would like to play the most. Deshaun Jackson lands back on IR. Will this be the week that we get Alshon Jeffrey back? If it is, I'll actually fire him up here. This Cowboys defense is atrocious, and I think that these top 2 wide receivers, if healthy, are going to have a good outing. Fulgham is someone that's a high-end wide receiver 2. Jeffrey, if he plays, probably a mid-level wide receiver 2. And then for the Cowboys, like I said before, the volume just not there for Lamb, for Michael Gallup. The consistency is concerning, so I am sitting them. Then Bucks at the Giants. Big news here, Chris Godwin will not be playing. Fractured finger, so Mike Evans gets a big time boost, especially versus this defense. And then the next guy that I would take a chance on is Scotty Miller. These last couple of weeks, he has been trending up. He's done some really nice things, stretched the field for the Bucks, and Tom Brady has looked really good. I think Evans is a wide receiver 1, low end wide receiver 1. Then Scotty Miller, a potential dart throw that if he does hit, a mid-level wide receiver 2. So keep that in mind. For the Giants, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton. Shepard came back last week from his injury, and he got a lot of targets, so I like him here as the preferred option for the Giants wide receivers, followed by Darius Slayton. However, I would say none of those guys have as high ceilings as either of the Bucks wide receivers. This is a good Bucks defense, so I anticipate them to hold the Giants in check. And then Golden Tate, yes, he had a touchdown versus the Eagles, but if you take that out, not all that impressive, so I am sitting him here, odd man out in my eyes. So with that, we wrap up our Week 8 wide receiver starts and sits, and as always, let us hear it in the comment section. Did you agree, disagree, along with any other start or sit questions you might have? We will do our best to answer them. And if you guys enjoyed, hit that like button, subscribe. Also, give us a follow on Twitter at AllDayPigskin to continue interacting with us as the week progresses. Shoot us your questions there as well. We'll make sure to answer them. And also, check us out online at alldaypigskin.com. Sign up for a free newsletter to continue getting access to exclusive content. All those details in the description. But in the meantime, we'll see you guys in future videos.